Hello and welcome back to the Flights here, recapping semifinal action from the U18 Men's World Championship happening in Frisco and Allen, Texas. So we'll hop into it today, of course, with the scores from today's game, starting with a 4-0 victory for Canada over the Slovaks. Now, this was a game that I think we can probably best characterize as, it's the Slovaks playing their style of hockey. And yes, the final score is 4-0, but those who did watch that game know that it very well could have been the other way for Slovakia. And if they found the back of the net on any of their power play chances, you start the game in the first, sort of 10-ish minutes having the power play, and then you got a 5-minute major power play. And the inability, the inopportunity, just missing their chances. And for the Slovaks, that's really their game from there onwards, is just missing their opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net. And this game could have very well been a different one. And for Canada, in my eyes, they're lucky to escape this game coming into this one. And, you kind of talk about it, and we talked about it yesterday, where, for Canada, all they had to do was play a full 60 minutes. And I don't know. They played good enough, I thought, to win, and obviously they did, and you're playing against a weaker Slovak team, so you can take a little bit of liberty, but you take those kind of penalties against any team, whether that be the Swedes or the U.S. or whoever it might be, even the Czechs we saw a little bit 2 days ago, I guess now. But for Canada, they just kind of didn't look great, and don't get me wrong, right? They had their chances, they had their looks, they could turn the game over, especially towards the end of the second period, where you could sort of definitely see them changing the momentum of the game. But early on, you saw Canada struggle, and you saw the Slovaks play their trap style and really cause some problems for Canada and undisciplined penalties. And it's just, at least at this tournament, the last two games, you've seen Canada sort of play down to their opponents. And you look ahead to who they got to go through now for the gold medal, and that's Sweden, who we'll talk about in just a few minutes here. But for the Swedes, you take any opportunity and you give the Swedes a power play, it's probably going to end up in the back of your net. So just something to keep in mind for Canada as they look to try and win gold at this tournament. And, as much as for Canada, they might not be favored in that one, I think they definitely still have a shot. And if they can play their style of game and not sort of fall to the level of the opponents we've seen them do for the last two games at least, we'll see them come out just fine. So for Canada, continuing to play their style of hockey. For the Slovaks, today was an excellent game. And one that I will say, if you look to who they're playing in the bronze, it wouldn't surprise me to see if the U.S. plays a little sloppy. We saw that a little bit with the Latvian team in the quarters. All of a sudden, the Slovaks very well could have some pucks in the back of that and be leading in that game, putting some pressure on the U.S., and who knows from there. So that's what we have for the first one, a 4-0 victory for Canada. That will send Canada to the gold medal game, Slovaks to the bronze. And then the other game, we have Sweden and the USA. And this was a doozy. And I think most people coming in knew this one was going to be a toss-up. You look at the prelims where we saw the U.S. take this one. And this game was one that for the U.S., they got some lucky bounces. For Sweden, they got some lucky bounces. And it's just a wacky kind of game, and one that you very much expect from these two teams, where you really don't know. One lucky bounce can definitely turn the game, and we saw that. And for the Swedes, clearly the better team. And not to say the U.S. didn't have their chances, because oh boy, they really did. But for the U.S., they couldn't find the back of the net. And that really was the storyline in this one. And, for Canada, very similarly, they struggled a little bit today finding the back of the net. I think they had 40, 43 shots, 40 shots, whatever it might have been. But the truth is, for the U.S., the number of breakaway chances they had in this game very well could have turned the tide. And any one of those goals very well could have been the difference in this one. And unfortunately for the U.S., just fell up a little bit short today. And you look at all the bounces they got, one off the back of the net, one just a free-for-all. You got the Sweden one that was a rim around the back, hits out right on the stick. Just a couple lucky bounces that all of a sudden can turn the tide. And for the U.S., just falling that wee bit short coming up in a one-goal game where, right down to the final face-off, very well could have won either way. But the Swedes take this one. They rid themselves of the demons of the preliminary round, and they will move on to the gold medal, winning 4-3. And I didn't touch too much on the Swedes, but one thing I will say is the Swedes look good today. You know, they gave up some chances for Canada when they play them. You can't give those kind of chances to the Canadians because they will bury them. But in the same respect, you continue to play your style of game, you continue to generate offense, I think they'll be just okay at this tournament. So that's what we got here for the scores, a 4-3 victory for the Swedes over the U.S. On to the news we now will go with for Canada. If you build it, they will come. And for Canada, they just have to get back to playing their game. If you continue to play the right way, eventually it goes in, like we saw in the second period, sort of towards the end especially, where Canada picked up their game. And even into the third period, you know, you started to see that get rewarded. And it's the classic expression from Field of Dreams. I know it's a baseball movie, but it's the same thing, where if you build it, they will come. And yes, it's taken completely out of context, but the truth is this message still does apply, because for Canada, continue to play good hockey, eventually the goals will come. Continue to put pressure, eventually the goals will come. Continue to take good, high-quality shots and generate offensive, dangerous opportunities, the puck will go in. So for Canada, if you build it, they will come. Continue to play good hockey. Do not drop down to the level of your opponents, and you'll be just fine as you take on a tough Swedish team tomorrow. As for Slovakia, opportunities and really opportunities wasted. And for the Slovaks, they change any one of those power play results where they score a goal on that 5-minute major. All of a sudden, this game could be on the dial, completely switched around. But no. Unfortunately for the Slovaks today, couldn't find the back of the net. Some blown opportunities, but in the long run, you know, still a good effort today. And unfortunately, they just fell a little bit short. And one of those chances goes in, all of a sudden this game could be completely turned on its head. And for the Slovaks, that's exactly what they needed to do. And we talked about it in yesterday's video, where 2 days ago's video, where it was about, for the Slovaks, all you got to do is keep the game close. And they did that. And this game could have been a very frustrating game for the Canadians. We could have saw what happened at the juniors happen here, where against Latvia, where all of a sudden you're not getting the chances, or against, even for that matter, Germany, where you're not getting those chances, and then all of a sudden you get frustrated, start throwing pucks into the middle of the ice, leaving odd man rushes coming back the other way. For the Slovaks today, they needed one spark, and unfortunately they didn't get it. That was their news of the day. Unfortunately, could not find the opportunities and could not bury those opportunities, which ended up costing them in this one. As for the USA, with bouncing away, and I kind of lost track of the number of bad bounces in today's game. I think I counted 3. I'm sure I missed 1 or 2 in there. But the truth is, it was one of those games. And you're playing against a tough Swedish team. Every bounce is going to cost you. Every bounce is going to help you. And, you know, I think the U.S. might have won those 2 bounces 2-1. But the truth is, this game was one that was back and forth right to the very end. And think about all the breakaway chances the U.S. had, especially late in that game. They put any one of those in, all of a sudden that 4-2 lead could have been, you know, wiped away in a matter of moments. And it couldn't have, might not even got there. Because you think about the fourth goal for Sweden, all of a sudden that breakaway chance, or that 2-on-1 or 3-on-2 or whatever it might have been, you know, that goal gets scored on for the U.S. Instead of a 4-2 deficit, you're at a 3-3 hockey game with momentum. One lucky bounce could have changed the game for the U.S. One lucky bounce changed the game for Sweden. And for the U.S., something to keep your heads high about, especially as you look towards the rest of this tournament where you're fighting for a bronze medal. It's not something to throw away, and you're going to play a tough Slovak team, rather, who are going to bring their game, and they're going to play a tight defensive game of hockey right to the very end. He's going to suffocate the living life out of you. So for the U.S., continuing to play their cycle game, especially down low, finding opportunities in the middle of the ice, is exactly what they're going to need to do to be able to win. And who knows, maybe they can find a lucky bounce in there too. Then on to Sweden, and in my eyes now for Sweden, it's their goal to lose. And as I've talked about this for the last video, because we've only been doing one video, but you know, this entire tournament has been for Sweden their tournament to lose. And you look at what they have in their draft class for the NHL people. You look at what they have on this team, and top to bottom, this is, in my eyes, one of the most dangerous Swedish teams we've seen at this tournament in a long time. And I think it just goes to show that this Swedish team is one that's going to put some pressure on teams like Canada, like the U.S., like the Czechs, like Slovakia, like Finland. This is the Swedish team of old that I think we've been missing for a couple of years. And not to say they haven't performed at this tournament, but the truth is this Swedish team this year, in my eyes, is the most dangerous we've seen in a very long time. So for Sweden, in my eyes, this is their gold medal to lose. They're a heavy favorite, in my eyes at least, against the Canadians. We'll talk about that matchup. We'll flip it over now to the playoff graphic, as we do see, of course, Canada and Sweden in the gold medal game, taking on the Slovakia, and then the bronze, we have Slovakia and the USA. And the truth is, and you got to be honest, is that this Swedish team is going to be a favorite. And it pains me to say, I got the Canada one behind me. I got the Canada on the head. I got the Canada that I'm wearing. In my eyes, in my honest eyes, the Swedes should take this game. And you look at what Canada's done at this tournament, and they've had a very easy path. And it's not to say that they haven't played well, because they have, and they've found ways to win games, especially in the preliminary round where they really dominated play. But this Canada team has had a very easy road. And you look at Sweden, you look at the one loss against the U.S., that was a tough loss. And for Sweden, I still think that this team is going to come out guns a-blazing against the Canadian team, who I think you're gonna see them take a nap, especially early in this one. And I think that's going to be the difference. And if Canada can hold the Swedes through the first 10, 15 minutes and find their game like they've had in the past few games, I think they'll be okay. But if Canada all of a sudden gets scored on, 1, 2, 3 goals in the first period, don't be surprised to see the Swedes run away with it. So that's what we got for the first one, the gold medal game, of course, and then the bronze we go. We'll talk about that one now with Slovakia. And Slovakia has always been a weird team, and you can look at it from any perspective. You can look at it from the 18s, you can look at it the juniors, you can look at it even at the Worlds, where they play a very structured game of hockey. And very similarly, they play their style to the Finns with a little bit less skill. That's how I kind of compare them in most tournaments. And the Czechs have kind of evolved into that structure. Sweden started to get away from that. But Latvia did it against Canada at the juniors. Germany did it against the U.S. and Canada at the juniors. And for teams like Slovakia, they have the tools. They just have to execute. And we saw that today against Canada, where very well this game could have been turned on its head if Slovaks could find the back of the net on 1-2 chances on that 5-minute power play. This game could have been completely turned. But no, fortunately the Slovaks couldn't find it. Something to keep an eye on, because any mistake typically ends up in the back of your net with these kind of teams. So for the U.S., just understanding that you can't be forcing stuff to the middle of the ice, like we've sort of seen with Canada the last couple games, and even against the Czechs, where they've kind of struggled a little bit getting going. I think that's where you're going to really see this Canadian team, this U.S. team, I think is very similar to the Canadian team, where it's a bronze medal game, right? It's not as important, but at the same time, for the U.S., if they start getting sloppy, don't be surprised to see the Slovaks capitalize. As for the U.S., expected favorites in this one. They should walk over the Slovaks, but at the same time, as we've seen in this sport, nothing's a guarantee. So something to keep an eye on there for the bronze medal. We'll flip it now to the schedule for the timing, and we have, of course, the bronze medal game at 3:30 p.m. That is the U.S. and Slovakia. And then the gold medal game, we go with Sweden and Canada coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern time. This is going to be the game. And all tournament long, we've sort of had it chalked up where in some capacity, it was going to be Canada, the USA, and Sweden in that top three. You can throw the Czechs in there too for the fourth team. But just the way the group stacked up, we were looking at that that kind of matchup as your gold medal game. And all tournament long, I've been looking forward to seeing what the Swedes would do when they're at full capacity. And right now they are. Canada's ready to go. Sweden's ready to go. It's going to be a good one. And it really wouldn't surprise me to see either team take it. In my eyes, as I sort of mentioned, It's all going to come down to the first 10 minutes because that, as always, has determined any Canadian game at this tournament. Made this far in the video. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like, consider subscribing. Tell all your friends and comment down below your thoughts on semifinal action from the U18 Hockey Championship. Until next time, see you.